Well, it's late, but we are talking some Cincinnati Bengals and NFL draft here on the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast, part of Cincy Jungle, and now the Believe Podcast Network, if you can believe it. See, had to throw a pun in there. So, yeah, if you haven't heard, we announced that a little bit ago, that all of our shows on the channel are going now over to Believe, and we'll get you the feed and everything to subscribe or resubscribe to our shows and build up that catalog for you, or rebuild that catalog for you. But regardless, I'm Anthony Cosenza, and man, this was an interesting evening, to say the very least, for the Cincinnati Bengals for the NFL draft. Obviously, this night moves a bit quicker. A lot more picks to get through, 2 rounds to get through. Personally speaking, this is my favorite night of the draft. And so and when the Bengals have 3 picks on this night, I'm very intrigued as to what they're going to do. Are they going to move up? And there are a lot of names towards the top of this round where you go, man, you may want to think about maybe sacrificing a day 3 pick and moving up. Do you want to get Johnny Newton? Do you want to get, some of these Keon Coleman? And maybe they tried to do that and they were declined. But regardless, the Bengals came through with big names that were maybe a little bit. I don't know. I don't like the word controversial, but I don't really like the word polarizing either. Ones that just stir conversation, right? Stir conversation. So, and we're going to talk about that for a little while here on the Orange and Black Insider. By the way, it's very late for those tuning in live, so I appreciate all of you tuning in live. Hopefully you don't have draft fatigue. There are so many great shows out there, including the ones on our channel, and outside of our channel, of course. And hopefully you don't have draft fatigue. I know for some of you it's 1:30 a.m. or later. It's late for me, but it's not that late. And so I'm feeling it, but I wanted to at least come on here for a little bit to talk about what the Bengals did, because this was one of the most entertaining, interesting, debatable nights, and really slate of picks to this point in Bengals draft memory, recent memory at least, right? This has been a group that has initially kind of said, when they entered the draft, it was always, tape and big schools, and that was kind of it. And then they've kind of pivoted a little bit to, the metrics, RES scores, how they test, all of that. They've maintained let's get team captains. Let's get team captains who are productive players. Let's get, guys that we feel could be locker room leaders, right? And there was a pick tonight that didn't fit that mold, the latter part at least, but it fit the forward part with the testing and the athleticism and the tape and all of that stuff. So it's an interesting dichotomy what the Bengals do, and what they have done, if you notice also in the last couple of classes, while they have relied largely on testing the last maybe two and a half classes to this point, right? They've relied heavily on the testing, there's the one or two outliers each class, be it testing or, lackluster testing or some character stuff. And the character stuff has really not been a thing or a topic of debate, so to speak, with the Bengals. That hasn't really been an issue, but it kind of popped up tonight a little bit, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But I'm Anthony Cosenza. This is the Orange and Black Insider, and this is part of both the Cincy Jungle and Believe network. So happy to have all of you with us despite the late hours. Appreciate you hanging out with us, talking NFL draft. Yeah, I mean, we've got a lot of people hanging out here, and some good names still available. Some good names still available. Tight end, running back, more offensive line help, defensive back, cornerback. I don't know that they need another safety per se based on what they did this offseason, but who knows? Maybe that's what's happening here. So we will see what the Bengals do with the rest of their picks tomorrow. So let's start with the first pick of the evening, and that is Chris Jenkins. Now, obviously, his father comes from a great lineage, and his father was a great football player in the NFL for a long time. And these are, I mean, you don't want to just obviously ascend someone just because of who their father was per se, but I mean, obviously, the work ethic gets instilled there, and other things that get instilled there. That you kind of feel like that's part of the process. And some of these kids, it goes both ways, right? Some of them kind of feel like, hey, they learn the work ethic, they understand the schedule and the grind of the NFL, and others understand the others kind of go the other way a little bit, where it's just kind of like maybe a little bit of entitlement or that sort of thing. But Chris Jenkins, one of the guys we've talked about a little bit, as the draft kind of neared, it kind of felt like, it was what is it, Rook or Rowe? I hope I'm saying that right. Michael Hall Jr. And then as Newton fell into the second round, you kind of felt like, man, these are the guys, right? These are the guys that they're going to go after. These are the guys, if they're going to get someone in the second round. I think a lot of us would have really liked to see them move up and get Newton towards the beginning part of this process, but this team just doesn't do that very often. They don't. So when you look at it, the Bengals here, they did not move around with their extra picks. They stayed put. They kind of let the draft fall to them, for better or for worse, right? There's some things that when you look at the picture, you go, hey, still a good pick. Now, so Jenkins is a guy that is very, very active along the line, a guy that can kind of do a number of different things. He's a little more adept at run defense, and I think a lot of folks are pretty pleased with the pick for the most part. I think there are some players, pick your poison a little bit, or pick your passion, I guess, with some of these. Hall, I do know that David Shaw, the great Stanford former coach, and just a great guy. He was very big on Michael Hall in this second round. So he was a guy that I think, a lot of people thought maybe was a possibility. There are some other, players here where you go, you can, again, Hall and others, but as it played out, Jenkins was the guy. And look, you can say there's still some development I mean, this is what comes with second round picks, right? It's kind of some first round traits that need developing of other areas potentially, right? That's the whole point as to why they're in the second round and not in the first round. But Jenkins is active. He moves well laterally. He can stop the run, and can move around a little bit on the line. And so I think that's what is appealing to the Bengals and what they could develop there. Now, I think he needs to develop as a pass rusher. He needs to he's not kind of that true, Geno Atkins-ish 3 technique type of guy at this point in terms of a pass rush. But I think, again, you have to go back to what the Bengals defense looked like last year, and they got trampled in the running game for the most part. And so now when you look at this schedule again this year, you got your AFC North, right? And now the AFC North boasts Derrick Henry twice a year. Nick Chubb, yeah, he's coming off an injury, but Nick Chubb's awesome. And the Steelers like to run the football as well. And oh, by the way, you need to have active and, defensive linemen that move well laterally when you are playing a Russell Wilson / Justin Fields, when you are playing a Deshaun Watson, when you are playing a Lamar Jackson. So, yeah, here's our guy. Here's our guy, Will. Will, I always like talking to you on Twitter, my man. We have a good dialogue, my friend. But you're right. It's just he wasn't a truly well-rounded or all-around, awesome interior defensive lineman, especially at the size, right? You kind of figured he's kind of 300-ish. Maybe he is that true 3-tech type of build where you can get in there and penetrate, pass rush, etc. That's not really what he does, but he moves well laterally. And so that's where I think his value is, especially, again, with the quarterbacks in the AFC North, the running backs in the AFC North, the rushing attacks in the AFC North. I think that's where the value comes with Chris Jenkins. Now, when I say lack of movement, this isn't referring to Chris Jenkins, by the way, if you're looking down there. Lack of movement is in the draft. The Bengals didn't maneuver. They didn't do things in the draft to move around, up, down, whatever. They kept their picks and they stayed put. So that is kind of, it was a little interesting. I thought they maybe would have, with a couple extra picks, and how many roster spots do they actually have for rookies? I don't know. I thought they maybe would have moved around a little bit more, but they did not. But here, Chris Jenkins was a guy that I think a lot of people liked. And I think there was a quote from, if I'm not mistaken, via Paul Dehner Jr. that Lou Anarumo, the Bengals defensive coordinator, was quote unquote squinting around the time that the pick was made because and picks before, because he thought that Jenkins wasn't going to be there. And that was the guy that they targeted. That's who they wanted, and they didn't think he was going to be there. I am going to play this, and I don't know if hopefully the sound comes through here. So I'm going to play it here. This is an interesting and fun clip. And then this is from January 1st, and it was Chris Jenkins back at the Rose Bowl here. But I want to play this just to kind of show the passion, etc., with Chris Jenkins, and a guy that, this is the kind of energy and player you're bringing into the locker room. So I'm going to play this here. Let me share this first of all, and give proper credit, because I don't want to be the guy that does not give the proper credit to the right people. Joel Sebastianelli, here you go. And this is him talking about Michigan and celebrating the great season by the Wolverines here. Let's see if we can get this going here.
Like I said, keep doing this, man. Keep making us feel. You know why? We don't care, man. We're going to keep doing what we do best. You're going to have to watch us. That's the real. Like I said, keep doing this, man. Keep making us feel. You know why? We don't care, man. We're going to keep doing what we do best. You're going to have to watch us. That's the real.
Well, why I play this is largely because this was more of the Bengals 21 mentality, 2022 mentality, where it's like, you don't like us, too damn bad. You don't want us to be a prominently exposed team, and in terms of playoffs and being in the dance and all that kind of stuff. Too bad. We're not as popular as the Cowboys. We're not as popular as Now granted, I'm talking about a guy who's on the Michigan Wolverines, one of the most popular college teams in the nation. But you know, th- again, that this is kind of the all attitude draft class. This is kind of the let's get a little bit big and physical and nasty. Let's get some edge. Let's kind of recapture a little bit of the things that maybe we lost. And especially, I hate to be this guy all the time, especially in this division, especially in this division, because it's a lot of chatter, it's a lot of physicality, it's a lot of bullying, it's a lot of jawing. There is a lot. I know I'm maybe too close to the window here, but there's a lot of jawing in this division. There's a lot of emotion in this division. And so here you go, right here, Will, again, saying team captain thing. So, team captain, you got yourself a bit of a, I don't want to say project or whatever in the first round. I think there are risks because there's limited tape and limited starts, etc. But I think that, obviously that's a player that you think can be a long-term effective player in Amarius Mims. Then you go and get Chris Jenkins here in the second round. And so that's, again, that passion, that leadership, and the, experience from his father being in the league. Hopefully you could say there's the work ethic, there's what, all of that stuff. You kind of felt like, maybe not as explosive. It doesn't bring you the same elements that a Johnny Newton does, but there are other things that you really, really like about the kid. And oh, by the way, the Bengals again default, whatever word you want to use, to big school kids, winning program. So that is where the Bengals heads and hearts are, especially with the Chris Jenkins pick here. So, but they do not. Again, I don't want to say lack of movement in terms of the player. When I say this down here, I'm saying lack of movement by the Bengals in terms of maneuvering around those specific picks. Now we go to the risk reward factor. And before I do, by the way, I do want to share this because I love this is quickly becoming one of my favorite sources of information in terms of raw athletic scores, etc. And that is old Kent Lee Platt. I shouldn't say old, he's probably like younger than me, but Kent Lee Platt. I say old because we rely on him so much, and pretty dang good RAS score from Chris Jenkins here. And again, this is the same thing with Mims and with Jenkins, with the next guy we're going to talk about, high athletic scores. Not so much on the height weight, but really strong 29 bench presses, great explosion. And you see that primarily in the broad jump, really good 40-yard dash time. And yeah, he's a little bit lighter, but 4.91, that's pretty solid. And the 20 and 10-yard splits are pretty solid. Not so great in the agility grade there. You see the shuttle. I still saw better lateral movement from him than maybe what you would have seen or what was scored here with the shuttle and the 3-cone. I saw more of that when I watched him. But again, a guy with a pretty high RAS score here, 8.99, and that is in the green, as they say, at least in terms of MathBomb, at MathBomb on Twitter, with his RAS score. So, and again, this is a guy, you're talking about a rotational player up front, a rotational player, and there's another guy that's going to be a rotational player up front as well. So, need long-term development guy, can groom him into a position and or a higher profile role. I think it was, for everybody, it may or may not be like, that was the guy I absolutely wanted, but I think everybody's like, man, that's solid. That's solid. It makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of people were hoping with Newton, falling to the second round. You're like, man, make a move for that guy, but just didn't happen. And probably the price was too steep to move that far up for the Bengals, at least for their blood. So they didn't want to do that. But anyway, let's keep rolling on here. It's my guy Pork Chop. I almost wore your Who Day hat tonight, man. I just had this on earlier. So had a niece's birthday party. I had this hat on, and when I got set to come on here really late, I almost put my Who Day trucker hat on. I'll wear that tomorrow for you, man. I appreciate you. But I did not hear. I'll have to look a little bit more into this, quite honestly, about. Again, I was at a birthday party, my friend, but I was surprised at how early Sweat went. And I'm say that not because, whatever you think about what he did a couple of weeks before the draft and all of that. I was in on a media call with Daniel Jeremiah, and he kind of talked quite a bit about Sweat, and he just kind of felt like he was going to be a day 3 guy. And so I was very surprised that, he went as early as he did. But, the Bengals, whether he was there or not, maybe they would have taken a chance on him, because the very next pick after Chris Jenkins was a guy with some character concerns. But the Bengals, they've been down that road before, but not so much recently with this team and what they're about, what Zach Taylor's about. But Burton is a guy that has a very concerning, difficult, hard to. It's a very odd background, right? I think, what is it, 5 schools in 8 years? And for those who watched the telecast tonight, Nick Saban had a quote that was pretty eye-opening about Burton, about, basically emotional intelligence versus emotions, and, keep your emotions in check type of thing. And so, but the Bengals go back to the Georgia well. He played at Bama and all of that under Saban, but obviously he was previously at Georgia. And so the Bengals love the SEC guys. They love the Georgia guys. They love Alabama guys, right? So Saban didn't have exactly glowing reviews about Mims either, but he has further insight on a guy like Burton. But here's the thing. I know a lot of people have talked about it, etc. There are guys like Steve Palazzolo of PFF who had him basically as a top 5 receiver in terms of talent in this class, and that's comping him up against guys like Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas. And then you're talking about, is Burton that next guy, according to Steve Palazzolo, in terms of talent? Our buddy Jake Liskow from Locked On Bengals relayed this about, Dane Brugler getting texts from executives saying, how bad was the background stuff, because the tape is insane. And that's what it is. The tape's just too hard to pass up. And so there are a couple of routes here. Couple of routes. I don't mean routes, pun intended. But this could be a short-term wow, long-term ouch in terms of reputation, all that kind of stuff. This could be a misunderstood person and turn out like what Joe Mixon turned out to be. Right? This is a franchise that took the chance on Joe Mixon, and Joe Mixon, for the most part, there's some stuff towards the end of his Bengals career here that you go, okay. But for the most part, guy was a pillar of the community, doing a lot of stuff, stayed out of trouble, and was a productive player on the field. Right. So there are a couple of divergent paths that could happen here. I think at a bare minimum, he will be a guy that is exciting for a couple of years and provide some things. And then it's up to him to decide, which path he's going to take. I think the sky's the limit for him. I think this is a player with Joe Burrow, that speed, that catch ability, that catch in traffic ability, his ability to hang on to the ball and catch in traffic. This, if you notice, that's the key with the players the Bengals have recently been bringing in. Gesicki was awesome at catches in traffic and contested catches, etc. And so this kid Burton is kind of the same way, but there are risks. And so if there were not some of the stuff that happened in his background, we're talking about a guy that's probably picked where Xavier Legette was, right? Lad McConkey, probably late first, early second. Ran better than you think. Sometimes you look at it and you go, how fast, some of the film stuff I saw, I'm like, how fast is he? How fast is a long speed? I mean, it's not absolute burner, but it is good. It is good. And this is where the Bengals again say, okay, where's the value? What does the tape say? What's the off-season issue or off-field issues? And what does the athleticism say? And here you go, 909, pretty dang good again. Not great in the height weight department, 6 foot, just a touch under 200. Pretty good 40, 4.45. And you see the explosion grade. So the Bengals wanted a guy who can stretch the field, who can, even if he cannot get separation at the next level, can still come down with the ball with a lack of separation, because there are some things on that tape where you go, I didn't see him separate from that defensive back overly high, but he high pointed the ball. He out muscled for the position. I just think he plays a little bit bigger and a little bit faster than 4.45 and 6 foot 196. That's just my personal opinion. But again, this is a pivot from the Bengals valuing the character, and and I don't want to disparage the young man. He could be a very, very nice young man and just a little bit misunderstood, but there is a reason that a guy with his production, guy with his athletic profile, big play ability lasted where he did. I mean, this is a guy that normally probably would be a late first round. In fact, some comparisons, I believe it was from CBS Sports, had him as a Jeremy Maclin type of player. And if you can get a Jeremy Maclin type of player in the third round, that's pretty solid. I mean, Jeremy Maclin's not a Hall of Famer by any means, but I mean, he had a pretty solid career and was a productive guy for a while. And so if you can get that type of player in the third round, particularly for in this offense and with Joe Burrow, yeah. So I mean, it's a guy. This is, I tweeted out and I don't know, maybe 4 people liked it. I don't freaking know. Nobody likes my tweets, but I tweeted out and kind of said, this is kind of the most balls to the wall type of draft class that Zach Taylor has ever had since being with the Bengals. He's played it very buttoned up. It's been a lot of captains, been a lot of, maybe forego a little bit of the testing tape or whatever for a guy that plays well, has a great attitude, and is a captain and all that kind of stuff. And there's still a little bit of that because Jenkins was a captain, as we talked about earlier. The next guy we're going to talk about was also a captain, but it's not a disparagement of character or anything like that. But let's be honest with Burton. That was kind of a little bit of the question with him, right? I mean, there's size questions, but it's also what are we going to get out of this guy? How mature is he? And of course, the age and the switching around of schools and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, good player. It's just a matter of let's get the head on straight. And the Bengals feel that they can kind of coach him in the right direction going forward here. And who knows, maybe a little bit of stronger leadership from Joe Burrow can kind of right the ship and let's move on. But at a minimum, I think for at least a handful of years, the Bengals can get a guy who can be pretty productive in their system. And then, we'll see what happens. Maybe he is a second, third contract kind of guy, like a Joe Mixon, right? Let's hope it goes that route and not expect the other route. So, but Jermaine Burton, a Bengals wide receiver here in the third round. And then they had a second third round pick. And this is the guy they defaulted back to. Okay, let's look at tape. Let's look at stats. Let's not look at the athletic profile, testing profile, so to speak. Let's not look at, some of the other things. Let's look at, he was a 2-time captain. He's a guy who was, per PFF Cincinnati Bengals in their Twitter account, I think he was the third best defensive tackle since 22 in terms of run stops. What he is, and that's McKinley Jackson out of Texas A&M. What he is stout and solid. Is he explosive? Is he the guy? Is he an Ed Oliver? And granted, Ed Oliver's a different build, etc. But is he the guy that just absolutely penetrates and tons of runs, tons of tackles for loss and tons of sacks? And no, that's not who McKinley Jackson is. But he's got 20, I think, 30. What was it? I'll have to look that up in terms of that total stat here of run stuffs. And that's basically no gains, minimal gains, etc. But a player where you kind of go, well, maybe this wasn't totally on our radar here. But here you go, 34 run stops since 2022. And third among SEC defensive tackles. And another great stat from him, a guy who plays a lot of different stuff along the line. And this is where a guy like Jenkins, a guy like Jackson, and others, Hill, I mean, obviously there, and Rankins, you can kind of just see the shell game that the Bengals are doing up front and what they were unable to do in previous years. I'm going to see if I don't know if I can blow that up, but essentially, when you look at the snaps in 2022, 2023, so 2021, Jackson played 14 snaps in the A gap, 309 snaps in the B gap, 1 over tackle, 1 outside the tackle. So not outside a lot. 2022, 116 snaps in the A gap, 268 in the B gap, 4 over tackle. Here, let's see if I can share this now. This will be a little bit better for you. Let me show you this real quick so you can kind of get the breakdown on this here. And shameless self-promotion. This is something that I put up on Cincy Jungle here. But here you go right here, snaps by alignment. And so instead of me telling you, I mean, look at it right here. And then this completely flips these numbers of between the A gap and the B gap, 235, 179. That completely flips. So what we're saying is, yeah, this is kind of a nose guy, but this is a guy that just moves around a lot. And he also is stout at the point of attack. He can eat some blockers. He's not the wow, I'm going to absolutely blow up plays, with a tons of tackles for loss or anything like that. It's just, I'm going to be reliable. And that's what a team captain is. I'm going to be reliable. You can rely on me to do a lot of these different things. Now, 6'2", 324. He's not, I see our guy David here talking about T'Vondre Sweat, not near the size of Sweat. And potentially you could say maybe not the talent level, but he does a lot of things just kind of pretty well. And so when you can kind of swap in and out, and now you see, okay, well, I think you see a little bit of the pivot from DJ Reader and Josh Tupou and guys that can kind of do other things. Reader was amazing. And I like Tupou probably more than other people, but you're starting to see guys that either move well laterally and or eat up space, are effective against the run. And guys, the Bengals were horrible against the run last year. Horrible. Horrible. So a pick like this where you go, okay, I get it. I get it. Maybe it doesn't move the needle as much as a re-signing of of DJ Reader, and maybe it won't even pay off nearly as much as the re-signing of a DJ Reader, but it's logical. And then there's also risk reward, particularly when you're talking about Mims and Burton with the slate of picks that they have here. You got a little bit of reliable, you got some decent athletic scores and or really high athletic scores in testing. It's an addressing of needs. It's some attitude for this division. I think it's so far at this point. I think it's an imperfect class, but I think it's good. I think it's good. I think it's good about what they are trying to do and what they're trying to improve upon from last year. Yeah. So Les, we're going to talk a little bit more about some best available. There are a lot of interesting players coming up here. I mean, I think Audric Estime from Notre Dame is really, really interesting. Sanat was selected, unfortunately, the tight end. So it'll be interesting to see what the Bengals do potentially or not do at tight end, because guys, they have not selected a tight end at all the last two drafts, and they haven't used anything more than a day 3 pick since Drew Sample was selected in the very first class of Zach Taylor's career. So I don't see a lot there. I think you're going to see interior offensive line. I think you're going to see running back at some point, potentially maybe another wide receiver. But I think linebacker could be in there, and maybe another defensive end that could fill out some things. But that's probably where they're looking this last day here coming up. There are some players that can help them a lot. One of the guys I did like, and we previewed him, Marshawn Lloyd, he went in the 3rd round, a couple picks, I think, before the Bengals went and selected Jackson. He went to the Green Bay Packers. That was a guy I thought really improved his stock with his testing and whatnot. So a lot of players out there that could help the Bengals and what they're trying to do. But all in all, I feel like this is kind of the all risk, all reward draft in terms of the Bengals and what they're trying to do. I feel like there's a ton of upside, and maybe you won't see it, especially with the more risky players, Burton and Mims. Maybe you won't see it with some of these guys. And, I think that this team also doesn't have a ton of, starter roster holes. They did a pretty good job of filling quite a bit of the stuff. And corner also, by the way, could be a day 3 pick, but so you're not, I think it's also sometimes harder for fans to get super excited about some of these picks when you go, oh man, I mean, when's this guy going to play? Well, I mean, that's a good problem to have when you have a good team. If you're wanting your 1st round pick to take, hundreds and hundreds of snaps right away, that means you're probably not in the best shape, or you were not in the best shape the year prior. So look, yeah, Les, the home run or fly out draft. Yeah. It's a swing for the fences draft here. It is a swing for the fences draft. And I don't really know how else you can put it. I mean, the Bengals have done, you would hope they've done their due diligence on some of these players that do have the question marks. You can ask 14 different people and get 14 different opinions on all these players. I know Chris Sims of NBC and Pro Football Talk, he has loved what the Bengals are doing. I know Nick Saban has not really liked what the Bengals have been doing. I know CBS Sports has been all over the board in terms of what the Bengals, they gave the Burton pick an A, they gave the Jackson pick a B. They gave, I think, the Mims pick a C. So, I mean, they've just been all over the place. Yeah, that is a guy, by the way, that I am into, and I'm seeing this in our. I think he's still. I think he's still around. Theo Johnson of Penn State. That was a guy that I thought was just a really well-rounded tight end. That would be a player I'd be pretty excited if the Bengals picked at this point. I think he's got some good upside. And I know Daniel Jeremiah on our call said he liked him more than other teams liked him. And that's that's another facet that I find fascinating about the draft and everything is just, hey, you know, some teams like players more than the talking heads that keep giving you the mock drafts and all of that, and vice versa. I mean, Jeremiah on that call said, "Hey, I see Sweat being a day 3 guy, probably round 4, especially with the recent legal issue." And he didn't think the teams valued him as high as the masses. And where does he go? Early mid second, right? So I think, yeah, it's a really good point. I think Will said it. Yeah, Theo Johnson. I think that may be a guy, particularly as they go back to that testing well, the well of testing well. If they go back to that, I think that could be a player at a position where you go, hey, let's look ahead. Let's supplement that out. Look, the Irv Smith situation did not work last year, right? So he's gone. And then, oh, by the way, Mitchell Wilcox is gone, went on to the Patriots. So maybe the Bengals really do kind of dive back in. Again, I still see interior offensive line. I see another running back. I think tight end could be in there, but I feel like I say that every year and I get egg on my face. But man, if they can, I think Theo Johnson would be very, very, yeah. And Jaheim Bell is another guy that could be a fun player in this offense too. But I think you get another potential, rotational pass rusher or one of those guys that a Zachary Carter-esque type of player where you go, oh, he's a little bit of end and a little bit of tackle, and maybe we can kind of get creative with him. And that's why I think Lou Anarumo is very happy tonight. I think that he can get creative with Rankins, with Jenkins, with Hill, Jackson, and all of a sudden he can kind of do a lot of different things up front. Now there's a lot of youth there, so they're going to need to figure that out. But I think they can do that. But a lot of fun players still left on the board, and I think a lot of people are still also pulling for Frank Gore Jr. I don't think he was selected yet. He may not even get drafted, but I think a lot of people think that he can make a roster and be a contributor at a pretty decent level at the running back spot. That's another player, and who knows? Maybe the Bengals go after another tall project wide receiver as well, going later in the draft here. But a fun draft, some risks, some question marks, and everything here out there, with the Bengals and what they have done in the first 3 rounds with their first 4 picks. They've gotten better. There's no doubt about it. I think the question is the improvement long-term or short-term, and how long of term will that improvement be? That's kind of my question going forward here. We're going to get on out of here. This is the Orange and Black Insider, and we are proud to now be a part of the Believe Network. We're going to get that link to you to our channel and reload some slate of shows and bring you all the new ones that we have on the audio side of things. And that gets fed out to all the major podcast networks: iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, etc. Again, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel if you're watching it there by that Cincy Jungle icon down in the bottom right hand corner. If you are looking at a screen, you can follow us on Cincy Jungle, the Facebook page there. And by the way, as we get out of here, got to give a shout out to Bengal Jim, who got a shout out on national television by TJ Hushmanzada, I think on the Jermaine Burton pick. So that was kind of cool. So yeah, anyway, that was kind of fun. But anyway, check us out there. Check us out on the Believe Network now. Pretty excited to be joining over there, and all of our stuff still on cincyjungle.com. News, opinions, analysis, breakdowns of picks, all that kind of stuff. You can get it there. Appreciate all you got. I mean, we've got a lot of people still watching, and it's, God, I don't know, 2:15 for some of you right now. it's not that late for me and I am tired, but I appreciate it. I wanted to get to you guys tonight. I had a lot going on today, but wanted to get to all of you to break down my favorite night of the draft, night 2, and all of the picks the Bengals made. Take care, everybody. We'll be back with tomorrow with how the Bengals ended the draft, undrafted free agent stuff, and everything else. Appreciate you all. Honestly, we got a lot of people watching right now, and you didn't have to do that this late, but hey, I appreciate it. It's good hanging out with all of you. Take care, everybody. We'll be back soon, and let's hope the Bengals make some more moves, whether they're risky or not, tomorrow. Take care.